And we continue with the program with Claudia. Claudia is a PhD candidate in the Focus on Emotion Research Group. Is almost at the end. Is that scary if I say that? No, almost at the end of her PhD. So we are looking forward to your thoughts.
So yeah, my name is Claudia, and I'll be talking about the affordances of the built environment. And I wanted to start with a question. Does the normal body exist? I just went to a conference where somebody triggered that thought, and it's not a new thought, and I think most of you already have an answer to this, at least on like a cognitive level. Like you're thinking about it, and you might be like, no, of course, we all know in this room that there's no normal body, and with that I also include the brain. I'm not going to separate brain and body, but no matter how much you consciously agree or disagree with it, this kind of normal assumption does influence our lives because the entire world is built around it in some cases. What Magda already said earlier is that much of the human-made world, for example, architecture, but also the design of things that we use, is designed for a standardized, able-bodied, average-sized human. And in some cases, that's, well, when we say standard, I'll get to that. But mostly because this is efficient, right? Like we're dealing with limitations. We have limited money and limited time, and mass production of stuff, of systems, of places, often looks at, yeah, how can we appease the majority of people, or at least what we believe like the standards are? Can we sort of cover like the check boxes? And these standards can feel objective in a way. They're enforced through the media and the design of daily life. So when a standard doesn't fit us, sometimes we might be tempted to think that that's our mistake somehow. Until we understand what these standards are based on, which a lot of the times is underlying power structures. So again, as Magda already brought up, we can sort of see the design reflects the people who design things and who usually are quite a specific group, historically speaking, and also exclusive participant pools sometimes. It's hard to see sort of in a lot of studies. I remember when I started getting into psychology studies, I always wondered, oh, they look very binary about gender or sexuality. Like they have very sort of, oh, it's men and women. So then already thinking about that, it's like, okay, well, of everything we know doesn't assume that people might have fluid gender. So there's loads of examples like that, right? And we also don't always know why it doesn't fit until someone points it out. So I remember talking to a friend at some point when she had read this book, and she was like, "Did you know that actually the consoles for gaming, the reason why they're so hard to use because they were designed for men, and with the hands, like the dimensions and everything." So this doesn't mean that in this case all men and all women are perfect, like two groups, and there's already no diversity. But there's so many assumptions built into the world that it's really hard to figure out where these assumptions are. We might not really think about it. I want to invite you to Earth 2.0. So excuse me for using today as a moment to experiment with a new presentation format a little bit. I thought it'd be fun. It's a little provocative maybe and not very subtle, but you can let me know later if you liked it or not. So please note that there is no way back. So please adapt quickly to this new planet. Okay, let's go. So there's some brief statistics about Earth 2.0. Nobody has ears almost, right? I'm sure you'll be fine with that. The average noise level is similar to standing next to an airplane engine. Remember, please adapt quickly. And also the average person is 3 meters tall. Also, we have some expectations for you to adapt. You should quickly find some friends. It's very important. We're social people. You have to enjoy your mandatory lessons. No skipping. Find a job so you can support yourself real fast, okay? So now, thought experiment, you go to this place. Now, what we find is that you're struggling to find friends and you have skipped several lessons. Why is that? Please choose your answer. Now, this looks interactive, but unfortunately, I've already decided for you. I didn't have time to make this really nice. Maybe next time you can pick. But so one answering option would be, it's actually hard to learn sign language. Nobody slows down or just speaks to me, not like it would be easy to hear. So because nobody has ears, right? So everybody's using a visual language. So they're using a visual language, and you don't have that yet. But even learning it is actually quite difficult. I just don't feel good. I avoid going outside because it's so loud and my ears hurt. I spend a lot of time alone at home now. When I want to sit with others, it's awkward to get on the chairs. They are very tall, right? That is actually an existing art piece. What your imaginary therapist will say to you is, the normal environment does not seem to be suitable for you, and maybe you should find some kind of support, right? So you can adapt to this place better. Have you considered working on stilts so you can reach the chairs? Now, I did say there is no going back, but it was a simulation. So let's have let's be. Maybe this experiment seemed a little bit extreme to you, right? But in a sense, we ask a lot of people in everyday life, without a possibility to escape to a different planet, to jump real hurdles to match normative expectations. I could draw you some comparisons. I work on the topic of deaf and hard of hearing people, and for example, a lot of them use cochlear implants. They themselves are a design, so a deaf person can interact with hearing people with the way that hearing people would like to talk to them, which is by talking and by listening. The implants sort of address this problem that if you don't hear, but you need to hear because everybody else does, then the CI makes you hear. Okay. On the other hand, similar to the stilts, there's a learning curve to using them, right? You might feel exhausted and awkward at the start. And they also don't quite have the same affordances, that's where we're getting finally to the title of the presentation, as someone who is just naturally tall or hears with CIs, right? So if you're naturally tall, you might sit on the very tall chair very easily, and if you're being asked to use stilts to do it, it might be quite exhausting, even after a while. So what affordances are is kind of these possibilities for action that exist if there is a match between the individual capabilities that you have and the environment that you're in. So if they don't match, then there are less possibilities for action, right? You cannot, easily sit on a very, very tall chair if you are not tall enough for that chair. So what we did in this case, looking at the deaf and hard of hearing students and the affordances they experience in the mainstream school environment to participate socially. And I will invite you to have a look at the paper if you're interested. I also included the QR code on the last slide, so you don't have to do it right now. Sorry, it's a bit fast, but yeah. So we kind of came up with this affordance, which kind of hopefully helps people think about it in a little bit of a less, let's adjust the deaf and hard of hearing person, but more of let's see how the difficulties to socialize or the outcomes of participation actually result from this relationship between the social setting and the individual capabilities. So it's a little bit more modular, I guess. You can also see how maybe some of these capabilities intersect with different groups and not just deaf and hard of hearing people. And we also acknowledge that it's not just the fixed environment properties that play a role, but also the social activities and the situation properties that are very dynamically interlinked with this set environment. So for example, I'm sure architects will know this well, but if you build things a certain way, you influence the behavior of other people, and other people are the social environment, and their behavior will influence how you as a deaf or hard of hearing person, or as a hearing person, as an autistic person, will find affordances for interaction, depending on your own capabilities. And for the capabilities, we didn't just look at, how tall are you? We looked at, in this case, auditory capabilities, because it's quite specific to deaf and hard of hearing people. There's a lot to say there. Also a lot of diversity within this group itself, but also visual, tactile, because of course there's other senses we can use. On a cognitive level, it's important to realize that when we use up our energy, when we do something difficult, we use up more energy, right? So there's a lot of things to consider there. Also the strategies you have, kind of like a toolbox that you build, and also your motivation. I think that's an important part to consider, because there's a psychological level to it. It's not just what can you do, but also what do you want to do, and what do you want to invest to do something. I will go through the rest quite quickly, but I do hope that if you want to talk about it, you can always talk to me and also find the paper. But what we did kind of is build this scaffold, hopefully, to make this conversation happen based on affordances, to question norms a little bit, and especially in the school environment. It's quite natural to realize you make a lot of assumptions based on your own experience and what the world already reinforces. It's cognitively an adaptive thing to do, right? Like you can't think about everything. But I think in creating schools on a social level, on a cultural level, on a build level, there's this responsibility, right, to question it, to think about which kinds of norms are inherent here, and how do these maybe match or don't match with certain capability sets of certain students. And so we made this matrix, which kind of shows some intersections between capabilities and features of the built environment. And it's not perfect. I'm sure this was built on literature analysis, but I hope it's a start to use affordances kind of as a tool to think about this, right? To question things. And to systematically diagnose barriers or like friction points, in this case, to social interaction, and to leverage them for environment-based intervention design. And I will not be going through this because I think I'm over time, but we have different kinds of affordances that we looked at in this matrix. So when you look at the intersections, you can always check how does the intersection of a certain capability, for example, a certain level of hearing and a certain type of environment, how does that affect whether you can exchange semantic information like the content of language, paralinguistic information, like does it support you or provide barriers in conveying information that is not part of what you're saying, but is kind of added information, situational awareness on an energy level. Does it make the interaction more or less sustainable? Does it support recovery and self-regulation? Because that's a prerequisite to even be able to use these opportunities for action. And also feeling safe, which I think is often overlooked as well as a prerequisite, because it affects emotions, and emotions are part of our system. And there is an interactive tool for this that you can access also using a QR code, but you don't have to take this picture because it's in the paper, it's linked there as well. And yeah, so maybe, for instance, can help scaffold the process of questioning our norms, in summary. And maybe I want you to take away these questions and maybe reflect on this yourself. Who was a place built for? And who not? Whose voices do we need to include to question our standards? And this once again goes to what Magda already said, right? So we need to really think about the fact that we ourselves we're not able to find all the places where norms are embedded, right? Because we don't have all the experiences of everybody in the world. So if we have a very diverse team or use tools that add perspectives and help us question those norms, that can be very helpful. So thank you for your attention.